Welcome back to another exciting episode working on Grand Prix bikes. This episode we are going to go over some engine disassembly techniques, kind of my processes on disassembling, triaging damage, figuring out what needs to be fixed, what doesn't really matter. I have the HE-JA RS125. I have the standard RS125. We're going to disassemble both, figure out the difference between the two, and come up with a plan to get both engines prepped and ready for next year. Ultimately, I'm going to have the stock standard RS125 ready, put in the bike, tuned as a standard box stock RS125. I at least want to have a bottom end set up, as well as a full spare crank. I have the philosophy of if you are going to travel thousands of miles for a race, you only race 3 or 4 times a year, have as many spares as you can reasonably have. I tell guys with vintage engines, if you can afford to have a B engine, a full B engine, meaning bottom end, crank, cylinders, maybe not to the same race spec or setup that your A engine has, but at least something so you can go ride around on the weekend to do that. We are also going to go over some of my cleaning techniques, the tools that I use, the stuff that I think is an absolute necessity versus stuff that you can get away with using if you don't want to spend all your money on tools. And then just some sort of the differences of RS125s versus CR125s. I've seen a lot of comments lately, especially since my last video, of, well, it's just a CR125 and a road race frame. It's not even close. It's not even remotely similar to a CR125 engine. They share a couple of nuts and bolts, but totally different transmission. Cassette style comes out of the left side. Completely different crank, completely different cylinders, clutch, everything. There's almost nothing that crosses over. I think the clutch basket is an item that can be interchanged between there. You can buy a Talon basket for a CR125 or an RS, but everything else is non-interchangeable. So we'll cover some of the differences of that. Some parts that I was able to source that are not HRC to kind of figure out a workaround on some stuff. As far as the chassis goes, as you can see, I picked up a 2001 Honda RS125 fairing. That came from the Czech Republic by Moto Forza. I will probably post a picture of the box as it showed up in America. It isn't Moto Forza's fault. FedEx decided to hit it with a Meteor on its way here. Fortunately, there's just a couple little cracks on the inside of here from where it kind of got squished, so it's not that big a deal. I am not going to take a video of fitting the Zeus fasteners to this because I will probably struggle and not be having a fun time while I'm doing it. It came with a big bubble tail that I don't like at all, which I will probably post a picture of as well, just so you guys can see a comparison. My personal style can probably best be described as Dodge Omni related. As some of you know, I owned a Dodge Omni. It was the first vehicle I purchased with my own money when I was in the Navy. I loved that car in spite of how horrible it was to me the entire time that I owned it. So I like lines that connect together. I like boxy. I personally prefer the NF4 body stylings. Everybody else is a weird sex pervert and wants the bike to look super phallic and weird. I don't like that. If I could make this look like a 1978 TZ125, I absolutely would. Unfortunately, that would be impossible to make bodywork fit. Bodywork makes me struggle enough as it is. I also got a beautiful carbon fiber front fender. Carbon fiber inner fender. That is the extent of the carbon fiber I will be using, just because I am not that big of a pervert. However, the price for those was $10 more than a fiberglass version, so I figured why not. The wheels are eventually going to be powder coated gold as soon as our powder coating here at work is set up appropriately. and the fairing, seat, tank are going to a good friend of mine, Tony, in Detroit, to get a super badass paint job. As soon as I get the bodywork drilled, I will be heading out there to get that taken care of. And then I will probably just kind of brush the frame a little bit to kind of clean it up, as well as fabricating a standard front fairing stay. I am going to avoid using the carbon fiber Ram Air if I can, just because it makes the tuning of the bike a little bit different. And for Keegan and my's sake, as we get started, I would like to make this as close to everybody else's RS125 as I can, just so you can go, hey, what jet are you using today? And I don't have to start from scratch on everything. I was also lucky enough for Stuart at Rising Sun Cycle to sell me 3 different thicknesses of seat pad. Keegan is a little bit taller than most RS125 riders, so Stuart stocks 12 millimeter, 20 millimeter, and then 40 millimeter seat pads. We had discussed getting an extended subframe. However, that dramatically alters the layout of the motorcycle. It puts your weight much further back. It really upsets the handling of the chassis, so we decided for the first little while to just go with extended subframes. Stuart at Rising Sun has these produced for him. I think they were like $80 for the pair, which is super cheap, and also includes the extended shift rod. It's one of those things where just because you can doesn't mean you should. I can manufacture anything. I could make these if I wanted to. I would be at the mill all day, even if I could design it and have it CNC'd. Stuart has it. If you can buy something off the shelf, you will never save money making something like that by hand. It's non-economical. I also got the seat. This is a 95 seat from Stuart. He has a source in Japan that he is keeping top secret. So if you want a super, super, super high quality seat, I mean, it almost feels like it's plastic, hard ABS. It is without a doubt some of the highest quality fiberglass that I have ever touched. I really wish I would have gone to Stuart to get the front fairing, but I wasn't aware that he had it. In hindsight, I would have just gone to him for everything on that. Also picked up some new grips, whatever Keegan prefers. I think those are Renthal Softs, just a full waffle. Yeah, so that's a little bit of what the chassis is going on. Also picked up a second crank, just as a backup. As some of you may know, Honda, in their infinite wisdom, decided to tin shield their crankshafts. I'll see if I can walk up and get a little bit closer view. Maybe it'll zoom in, maybe it won't. This is a Honda RS125 crankshaft. It is extremely similar to the CR125 crankshaft, except obviously the ends are slightly different than the CR. The journals and shafts that the gears go on, the ignition go on, just a little bit different. The main difference between this and a CR is it has a 24 millimeter pin as opposed to, I believe, a 20 millimeter pin that a stock CR125 has. Significantly larger pin, which makes for a significantly larger big end to accommodate for more horsepower. Honda is really proud of these cranks. Most people do not have the ability to build them. I am fortunate enough to have the capacity to build these myself, as well as Keegan. His full-time job being crank rebuilding is probably one of the best tin-type Honda crank rebuilders I have ever met in my entire life. We have a process and a method, which I'm not going to talk about because it's a secret, of rebuilding these cranks and truing them without damaging the tin on the outside. Right now, there are only 3 companies that advertise that they produce a connecting rod for the NX4. One of which being Honda. They want to sell you a whole crank, which I want to say is $1,200 to $1,300. I'm not 100% sure. For a crank, I don't know if that's a good deal or a bad deal. Obviously, it's a Grand Prix bike. They know that if you do not have the capacity to build a crank, you are going to pay whatever you have to for it. As far as aftermarket options for a connecting rod, VHM, which you can buy from Stuart is a company out of Europe producing connecting rods. I have been told from the people who are purveyors of those things, VHM makes a phenomenal rod. I have used VHM pistons in some of my customers' engine builds. VHM pistons are incredibly high quality. You do pay the price for it. I will not be the first person to advocate for paying for a VHM piston just because I am fully in bed with Wassner. I believe that Wassner produces the best piston for the money. VHM stuff is nice. They produce it, I believe it's close to $350, $400 for that. The other company that is producing an RS125 connecting rod is TKRJ. TKRJ is very, very, very similar to an OEM brand of piston and connecting rod. Their rods look almost identical to almost all standard box stock Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, what you call it. They're nice, they're good, they're pretty economical. It's hard to get some of their stuff if you can't find it on eBay or if you can't find it in a catalog somewhere. I think they have a minimum order of rods that you can order directly from them in Japan or whoever the distributor in the United States is. Fine stuff. I've used their pistons. Their pistons are super lightweight cast stuff. I know guys like Mark Morrow is a huge proponent of using TKRJ cast pistons. I'm not going to get into a debate about cast versus forged pistons in this video, just because one of the next videos will be cylinders, pistons. I'll have another one on cranks, crank balancing. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. There's a time and a place for everything. The stock standard pistons in all OEM manufacturers are all cast. They work just fine, obviously. There's a debate for just about everything. TKRJ makes a connecting rod for it. I have also done some digging. There is a Wassner connecting rod that I believe with a slightly different little end bearing will drop right in. For my money, because I get a pretty good discount, I am going to try to use the Wassner. There are some people who say that, OEM is better, Wassner is better, you name it. The truth of the matter when it comes to pistons, connecting rods, and piston rings, there are only so many places in the world that produce these things. There's only so many places in the world that have the capacity to forge connecting rods, to forge pistons, to manufacture rings. To my knowledge, Moly is the only company that produces their own piston rings. Piston rings are an incredibly complicated beast to tackle. The machines that make them are pumping out a spiral of rings constantly. All of the aftermarket pistons that you're using, none of those companies are producing their own rings. Likewise, Honda, Yamaha, unlikely that they are producing their own connecting rods. There's a company that all they do is produce forged connecting rods. They're buying them from there. That being said, there's only like 4 or 5 places in the world with the capacity to produce connecting rods. Everything after that is the quality control that they have to produce a higher quality product. It's just like everything. You can go out and buy a Grand Prix bike. You could also go buy a Kymco dirt bike engine, and it could claim to be 125 cc's. It can claim to have a close ratio transmission. It doesn't mean that you're going to be successful at Grand Prix racing just because the quality control is different. The quality of the parts that they use, the quality control standards that they hold all their parts and tolerances to, that's what makes the difference between a TKRJ rod, a Wassner rod, and lesser rods. Because of the nature of my job doing R&D for Millennium Technologies, I cannot, without getting in trouble, mention brands that I will not use by name. However, I have just mentioned the brands that I enjoy working with, so you can take that information and draw whatever conclusion you want from it. I could ramble on about the quality control of some American companies and their decline in the last 5 years, particularly companies that have been bought by private equity firms. I can't say anything else because I will get in so much trouble, but just know that a product is only as good as the company's quality control will allow it to be. Quality control sets the standard for how nice or bad anything will be of part nature. Okay, so as I, Gary Braun, either in my capacity for Millennium Technologies or my capacity for Retrodyne or anything like that, as I begin to work on an engine, proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. The more prep you can do before you start to even turn a wrench, the greater success that you will have. I personally like to have a towel laid out so that I can wipe my hands off even though I'm going to be wearing gloves. I like to get the grease and oil off of my gloves so that I'm not slipping with wrenches. I'm not getting tools covered in grease. This is a baker's pan. One of the best secrets I will give everybody right now: go to a restaurant supply company and buy yourself a bread rack. This is a proofing rack, a bread rack, a baker's rack, whatever you want to call it. These are aluminum baker's pans. I believe they're 2 foot by 3 foot, maybe not even that big. And on it, I have my $6 Harbor Freight nut and bolt organizer. As I begin to take this apart, you'll see me take one section of bolts off, put them in a pocket. The next section of bolts, nuts, put them in a pocket. Transmission cluster, gear shift cluster, so on and so forth. I don't need to label any of that stuff just because my particular flavor of autism allows me to group stuff. I figure out where it comes from. It's not that hard. If you struggle with figuring out this 25 millimeter bolt can only go in a spot with 25 millimeters, maybe mechanics aren't for you. There is a learning curve to some of this. If you do not have the mechanical aptitude, start small. Don't take apart a whole engine before you get into something and break it. There's a definite ability and inability that some people have to do this right off the bat. I am just fortunate that my flavor of autism is this. This is like it. I think about this all day, every day. It's the only thing I really enjoy doing to the capacity that I enjoy doing it. As far as tools, there are children in sheds with rusty Craftsman tools that have successfully put together dirt bike engines, street bike engines. There is no need to go onto a Snap-on tool truck and spend $70,000 to get a full set of tools. I have purchased expensive and nice tools because I am a professional. I do this for a living. I personally feel better when I pick up a ratchet and there's a bunch of teeth. The Snap-on guy comes here, it wears out. I chuck it at Bart. I say, fix this. He fixes it, gives it back to me. I'm fully aware that Harbor Freight has the same warranty. I don't want to drive there. I don't want to talk to everybody all the time. It's just a different way of living your life. That being said, before you tackle a full engine build, make sure that you have all the parts that you need, all the tools that you need, any special tools that you need. Before I started this video, I had to turn a new ignition puller. Almost all dirt bikes use a 27 millimeter by 1 millimeter thread puller. The RS125 uses a 24 by 1. I checked my 27 millimeter puller just to make sure it would go. It would not. So before this video even started, I was on the lathe turning one of my 27 millimeter pullers down to a 24 millimeter puller. It would have been really embarrassing if the first thing I did was go, oh damn, I don't have the special tool for that, and had to pause the video and start over. Make sure you have the right tools. Make sure your tools are clean. Make sure your work area is clean. One of the biggest frustrations I see when I see other people working is they are working in a dungeon. There is shit all over the place. There's cups with liquid sitting around. There's bugs. It's like a fucking horror movie. Nobody has ever failed at anything because their work area was too clean or too well lit. Obviously, as you begin to take something apart, stuff is going to get strewn about, and you will have a much greater chance of success if, as you are taking it apart, you are not mixing it up with other engines. At the end of every engine build or disassembly, I start with a clean slate because I know, man, I've got one extra bolt. It can't be that important. When you're working on a car and you end up with extra washers, if you've got one extra bolt somewhere or like one of those little plastic push pins, the joke is, well, I'm smarter than the engineers. I didn't need to put that one back in. In a Grand Prix bike, there's nothing extra. There are no extra nuts or bolts that you should end with. If you do, something is horribly wrong. You've forgotten an internal engine component, a circlip, a washer, something. This is very, very, very smartly engineered. One of my favorite quotes is, "How am I going to be smarter than a room full of Japanese engineers?" I'm probably not, even on my best day. You can argue that with street bikes, when you're converting them to race bikes, I can't believe they only made this with a 20 millimeter carburetor. The bike was designed to be a street bike. This is a Grand Prix bike. It came with a 40 millimeter carburetor. Chances are me going to a 44, 46 is not going to be the direction that this needs to go in. So a clean slate, a nice clean area, well lit. All of my tools are put in a way where I know they are going to be. There is nothing more frustrating than going to grab something and it's not there. You've got to spend 20, 25 minutes going, I had that 10 millimeter socket, where did it go? If you put it back all the time, you're not going to be looking for it when you go to do it again. Damn, this guy can yap. Okay. With that, I said this last time, I will say it again, I don't love using a ton of electric tools if I don't have to. There are some instances where it just makes life easier if you're taking off a sprocket, if you're taking off primary or clutch nuts and bolts, or ignition, you have to. I will never be able to grab this with my puller, and I will never be able to hold on to this while I get it off. Even with a strap wrench, even if I make some sort of custom weird thing, an impact is going to pop it right off. Life will be good. I might have to move the microphone. This is going to be loud, sorry. I'm going to set you down. Every time I cut from now on as well, you're going to see me clap as I use the wireless microphone to get better audio. There is a 0.4 second delay, as I found out in the last video, which I did not appropriately fix in the last video for the entirety of it, as well as some of you pointed out. The audio is jacked up. The only way to have success in making videos is to have moderate video, but you have to have good audio. I totally understand that. Nothing will make me click off a video faster than horrible nightmare audio. The wireless mic does that, so every time I split it up, there's going to be a break. I am using a transmission disassembly table. You don't have to have one of these. It makes it nice because there is a drain with a really, really nasty, scary slop bucket in there. It looks like this has been used to drain dead bodies, the last person who used it. It's pretty slick. These are kind of expensive. I think this one was like $500. Obviously, again, I do this for a living, so I have used it extensively. I think in the last 3 years I have built close to 500 engines in 3 years. So having a transmission disassembly table has more than paid for itself. I do not believe in using engine stands for disassembling engines or assembling engines. All it does is get in your way and constrict you from doing that. I like wood and little boxes and towels and stuff. So we are going to start disassembling this. I always start with draining the oil. This is a Snap-on 24-ounce brass dead blow hammer. You do not have to have a brass hammer, nor do you need to have a dead blow hammer. I have found that in the capacity for disassembling engines or moving stuff along, it has been helpful for me. I'm going to let this drain. There's a tiny bit. Oh, look what I've done. There's just a tiny bit of oil left in this. I believe there's a small passageway in there that allows the oil to pass between the clutch and transmission. So we'll let that sit for a little bit. I cheated a little before I took this video. Actually, at the end of the last video, I could not help myself, and I took the head off because I wanted to see what the condition of the cylinder and the head were. So this is the HEJA cylinder head. This only fits this cylinder. Obviously, it's got two little O-rings here that seal the stud holes in the top of the cylinder. The stock RS125 does not have these. I believe that there's going to be Allen-style bolts holding the front of this down as opposed to the regular nuts that the other cylinder has, and that is because the sub or auxiliary exhaust ports cut into that hole. So obviously those seal that up. I bought a little rotisserie so you guys can look at my sweet cylinder and be jealous of it. So this head is proprietary. This can only be used with the HEJA cylinder. I have sold many motorcycle projects in the last couple of weeks. So I splurged on a VHM head for my stock RS125. I have 3 standard RS125 heads. All 3 of them have damage, and obviously I repair heads for a living, so it would take me, 20 minutes to weld them up and recut them. But I want to have a really cool race bike if I'm going to own like 3 things. So this is a VHM head with the insert style dome. The real benefit for this is if you want to run a different type of fuel or if you want to experiment with different levels of compression. VHM has, I think, 15 different heads for the RS125. Stuart stocks them all. And the best of all, you call him and you go, I want to run 110 leaded. And he goes, you need this insert. And he sends it to you and you don't have to do anything. Obviously, I will measure it just to make sure when I set my squish that I'm right where I want to be. But it is so nice to own a motorcycle where you don't have to whittle everything from scratch. That is a very nice feeling. I think Stuart sold it to me for about $250, which is a lot of money, but it's a very nice product, and I think I deserve to have nice things, despite what happens in real life. I have not looked at the cylinder past that. It does have Allen bolts in the front of that. The exhaust spigot is very oily, and it has very small nuts on the back of that. Yeah, those are 10 millimeter. That is incredible. Being very vulnerable now. I typically do not let people watch me work. I will also preface all of this by saying this video is for my friends, people who want to watch me work, average people. If you're a Grand Prix mechanic, if you're a factory racer, I would never do it like that. I would never do it like... That's fine. I don't expect everybody to do it the same way. If every single person on Earth is given the exact same task, you will get 100,000 different methods of getting to the same conclusion. There is no real right or wrong way to do a lot of this stuff. I have the way that I'm comfortable with doing it. I like to say that I call it my 10-80-10 analogy. I do not like doing work for the bottom 10% of people because they are a huge pain in the ass because they have no idea what quality is or why anything costs what it costs. They want the cheapest absolute bullshit that they can ever get, like Nomura. You should never, in good conscience, purchase a Nomura piston or a connecting rod. You are going to be worse ahead for the effort it takes to get that. It's a difference of like $12 between buying a Nomura versus buying a real, genuine quality part. I can't remember the Benjamin Franklin quote. The sweetness of good price is often forgotten with the bitterness of poor quality. So yeah, the bottom 10% of customers, huge pain in the ass. They have no idea why anything costs what it does. They just want the cheapest piece of shit product they can buy. And then they cry when they have the cheapest piece of shit product. It's very, very annoying. The same goes for the top 10% of customers. I am a huge pain in the ass. I want the cylinder roundness specifications. I want surface finish. I'm looking at crosshatch angle. I am a huge pain in the ass to work with. Most of the time when you are working on a dirt bike or, wow, it's a titanium nut. That is crazy. Or a street bike, if your crosshatch angle is 38 instead of 30, chances are your life is going to be okay. The worst customers we ever have here at work are people that know what a profilometer is and can understand the very basics of valley depth, peaks. They understand what the words are, but most of them don't understand what any of it means. And it drives us crazy because they'll want information, but then won't know how to interpret that information in a way that means anything. The people we like to work with are the 80%. Average dirt bike people, average road race people, people who aren't a huge pain in the ass all the time. Wow, that is beautiful. Holy cow. Damn. I will get this out and show you a picture. That is the most beautiful connecting rod I've ever seen in my life. It doesn't have a brand or manufacturer on it, and I wonder if it's that's a titanium rod. That is something else. HEJA cylinder with power valve springs. The cylinder looks very lightly used. It has the same triple port crack that the other one has. Here at work, I don't know if anybody else calls it this, we call the exhaust port when it has sub-exhaust ports triple port, 1, 2, 3. Almost all the time, people who do porting make those bridges too thin, and they crack between there. You have a lot of pressure. You've got a power valve rattling around. You've got a piston hitting that constantly. Almost all cylinders with triple ports will eventually crack between the triple port. Interestingly enough, with this being a serious as a heart attack Grand Prix motorcycle, I'll see if I can look at the same time that you're looking. If you look at the transfer ports, there is a rough casting. They did not, quote unquote, polish the inside of that transfer duct. And as you can see, the bottom of the transfer ports are kind of blunt. They are cut what I call airplane wing style. When I first started porting cylinders, I was obsessed. You got to knife edge it. It's got to be sharp. Everything's got to be polished. You got to polish it up. It's all bullshit. I will argue with people all the time. I will, again, probably argue more when I do the cylinder video. Polishing the inside of cylinders has almost no effect, if not sometimes a negative effect. People will spend a ton of time making mirror intakes, making sure that they get every single little casting flaw out. Is it nice to have a smooth port without a bunch of ridges, steps? Absolutely. When you start to find out how fast the air is traveling through the cylinder and out of the exhaust port, you quickly realize the amount of time you spend getting every single little divot out is nothing gained. The juice is not worth the squeeze. That also being said, if you look at simulations of cylinders being run for a very brief amount of time, as the piston is coming down, there is more cylinder pressure than there is incoming intake pressure. Flame will travel into the transfer ports. So there's all these people who, you got to have this, you got to have that, you got to have this angle, you got to have that angle. When you really start to figure out how fast things are happening in here, you can kind of take almost everything that all these professional people say with a grain of salt. There's best practices. There are obviously better port configurations than others. But all of the little kind of snake oil things that people are talking about, that stuff goes out the window when you actually look at the way things are running. I'm not going to take the power valve out of that right now because I don't necessarily care. But yeah, that is a beautiful, beautiful connecting rod, beautiful crank. Interestingly enough, this is not a standard RS125 crank. There is no tin shielding on it. So this is an aftermarket crank. I was told that the HEJA kit had what was called an inertia crank, meaning that it has more mass. We will find out together what that means. I will compare the balance factor and weight of a standard crank and compare it to the HEJA crank. I'll do a whole video on balance factors so a bunch of nerds can tell me that I'm an idiot. One of the most frustrating things that I experience is the internet, obviously. I hate Facebook more than anything. If I could get off Facebook, if I could have a flip phone with Facebook Marketplace and Instagram, I would. I love Instagram because people can follow me and see what I'm doing, and I don't have to see them. The fact that on Facebook, I have to be friends with people and see the inner machinations of their lives, their political thoughts, the pictures of their babies, drives me nuts. On Instagram, it's so much better because you can follow me and I don't have to see the things that you do every day. It is the best case scenario for me personally, hating to interact with people that I don't want to interact to. But I like people seeing what I'm doing, and it's kind of nice when people comment nice things on what I'm doing. On Facebook, you do not get that. It is the worst of both worlds. I lost the magnet now. It's right there. I should probably position that so I can stop knocking it off. It is called a lapel mic after all. We'll put it on said lapel. Where was I going with that thought? The worst part of Facebook are the Facebook groups, particularly my least favorite one of all time. Shout out to the two-stroke research and development Facebook page. There is very little research done, and everybody seems to be developmentally challenged in that page. I see people talking about spark plugs. I see people talking about detonation, even though it is almost never detonation. It is almost always somebody sucking in rocks and dirt and dust and blaming detonation on it when they don't understand detonation in the slightest. I commented on it, which was probably my first mistake. Somebody was talking about balance factor, and I know quite a bit about balance factor. I have balanced many cranks. Big shout out to Pat Hansen. He is a teacher at the Milwaukee Area Technical College who taught me how to balance crankshafts. And somebody had asked about balance factor, changing the balance factor in a two-stroke crank. You absolutely 100% can change the balance factor in anything. You can change the balance factor in a crankshaft. Technically, you cannot balance any single cylinder crankshaft. There will always inherently be vibrations, either up and down or front to back. There's rotational, and there is, I'm drawing a blank because I'm on the spot right now. I promise I'm not that stupid. Up and down and rotational, whatever. These are always stuck on their dowels. I think I got a plastic wedge for that somewhere. So I made the mistake of commenting and letting that person know that there is a way to balance single cylinder cranks. And there were maybe 4 people who asked me, a question about how to do it, how to figure that information out. And there were maybe 10 people who were like, "You are an idiot. There is no possible way to balance a single cylinder crankshaft." Which is technically true. You can never take all vibrations out. That is a stuck thing. So I ended up arguing with a couple of absolute morons for longer than I really should have about balance factors and balancing, and it was really very frustrating because obviously I do it for a living. And I told one of the guys, I do this for a living. I think I know what I'm talking about. And he responded, "Yeah, you can fuck stuff up for a living too." Sure. But he did not have an answer to any question. So I don't know why I choose to argue with these people. That's my fault. Yeah, a flip phone with just Facebook Marketplace and Instagram would be excellent. Can't make calls either. I hate with a passion talking on the phone. I cannot stand talking on the phone. I am too autistic for it. And there's so many people, we have to talk on the phone. We have to talk on the phone. I have to be able to call you. And then they call me. "What are you working on?" "Nothing now. I'm talking to you on the phone." Oh, you were working. Yes, I was working. Or I'll have the welder on in the background. When I made expansion chambers for a living, I would have the welder on, and they would go, "Damn, I can barely hear you." yeah, that's crazy. I'm working. I'm actively not making money to call you right now. Oh, I just wanted to see if you've ever made a expansion chamber for a Kawasaki KE100. I'm looking to spend $200 on one. Oh, great. I'm very glad that I turned the welder off for this conversation. So, this is the side cover for the RS125. It has an ignition timing pickup on it. The ignition itself is about as bare bones as it gets. You have your inner rotor. It's just a series of magnets. And you have your stator, which does not have any timing pickup. It does not have any timing to change. It does not have even a timing mark on it, it doesn't look like. Nope, nothing. It's just got 2 dowel pins. This is totally immovable to generate electricity for creating spark. It looks like this is non-adjustable also, which means that all of your timing adjustment is done on this plate. This is an aluminum inspection cover. It looks to be an M10. It is. Put some of this stuff out of my way so I'm not fighting myself. Never, ever, 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 ever use an impact on an aluminum plug. It is your fastest way to destroying that aluminum plug. Honda CR250s, CB77s, there's a bunch of other stuff that Honda uses that has 17 millimeter tappet inspection covers. They are extruded nuts, and the amount of people that I have seen use impacts on them and the amount of broken covers that we get at Millennium on CR250 cylinders is insane. I don't know what would possess somebody to put an impact on something like this, but it's cast aluminum. You are going to destroy it. Yep, there are timing marks on the inside of this. I will stand behind the camera so we can both look at this together. You can just probably barely see the timing marks on the inside of that. Mine appears to be set dead in the middle. I have not looked at the manual yet to see what kind of timing that this engine enjoys. Typically, when I put together a road race engine, I'm very conservative with timing. I really don't like melting pistons. I do not think that the small amount of power gain you get from running really, really, really advanced timing is worth it. This bike has a programmable ignition, so technically you could fairly advance your static timing, change it secondarily with running a different map. I don't know enough about this yet to be able to do that. I have a secret weapon for my ignition. I am very good friends with the man that developed the ignition and ignition controls for the Polaris. If you're not familiar with the Polaris, it is a cross between a TZ and I believe a Polaris snowmobile engine built by Dr. Rob Talui. The engineer behind the electronics has wished to remain anonymous lest he be kidnapped by the KGB and taken to Siberia to develop Russian snowmobiles. And he doesn't want people on the internet contacting him for really, really dumb nonsense like they contact me. So I have agreed to let him be anonymous. But he will be helping me with my ignition stuff because I took one look at it and went, boy, this isn't mechanical. I am not going to have any part of this. So I'm excited to send that to him and see what he says about it. Okay, back to this. There's an M10. I'm going to use a long one so I can grab it later on. Back that down to 1. With clutches, you never want to back one all the way off. You will have an uneven amount of pressure on your pressure plate and the backing plate. Usually when you get them half off, you're not going to have any trouble. I personally have broken an XR200 pressure plate within the last 9 months. I was very embarrassed because my apprentice was watching me, and it was not my motorcycle, it was his dad's motorcycle. So I had to pull the pressure plate off of my bike and give it to him because they were going on a trip, which was very unfortunate. This is using the standard Honda clutch plates. This is incredibly similar to the CR125 clutch. They interchange plates. These are the standard CR125 clutch plates, which are very nice because they are affordable. I will be going to a Barnett clutch. I believe that they make some of the nicest clutch products money can buy. I am a stickler for billet clutches. This one isn't bad, but cast aluminum clutches have a tendency to groove. Once they are grooved, you will not be able to get your clutch into neutral, and that drives me insane. Obviously, billet clutches are not the answer too if you are hard on clutches. I believe that Barnett has developed steel fingers that go on the inside of the clutch to prevent you from bashing them up. Alternatively, companies like Recluse and KTM have gone to all steel clutches that don't have aluminum at all. Looking at the throwout thrust bearing, that is very nice on there. I will put that in with the clutch parts. Now, the question is, did I lose my big sockets? I put them somewhere stupid that isn't over here. And I'm breaking my rule of having all my stuff together. So I have to walk off camera for 35 seconds. Earlier today, I was working on my Cushman Minute Miser. Millennium is about a mile long, and I am on the very far end of the building. Shipping and receiving is on the very far end of the building, on the opposite side. And I am tired of walking. I do not want to walk for the rest of my life. So I bought a Cushman cart. Unfortunately, the first one I bought was bad. The second one I bought exploded immediately after I got it working as well, which is just my luck. So I swapped rear ends. I will probably post a picture of the rear end on the ground. Me very sad. And maybe if I can get Keegan to take a picture of me, I will post a picture of me on my good Cushman. Happy. You can use a clutch holder if you want to. In my experience, clutch holders, while you are impacting them off, have a tendency to break inner clutches more than they do to hold them nicely. These can also break. You can also get solid billet versions of this. This is the same as a CR125. These are cast aluminum. These can wear out as well. Typically they don't. You got to really hammer on one of these things to have it go bad. This is different than a CR125 basket. This has a different race setup and a different backing plate. The baskets interchange, but I bought a Talon basket from Stu at Rising Sun Cycles. I am a little surprised that there isn't a throwout bearing between the back of the clutch and the shouldered Yeah, it should spin on that. So I'm a little surprised that there's not a throw bearing. Typically, dirt bike, street bike clutches will captivate the center of the bushing. They'll captivate a backing washer. They'll captivate a front washer, and then let it float. This appears to just ride on that. Obviously, it'll captivate the front washer, but very, very tight tolerance on that. So I wonder if that is a wear item. I like to keep all of the bolts, nuts, washers from a clutch assembly in one position with each other. I know some people will wire tie them in the direction that they came out. I don't typically do that unless I'm putting something in storage, just to not forget it. This engine has a counterbalance shaft. I've now gotten this stuck in my box. So in the spirit of talking about balance factors and balancing, the best way to get rid of vibrations is to induce vibrations in the opposite plane. It will make it feel like there are less vibrations. If your crank is going up and down and you have a counterbalance shaft where the balancing weight, the weight on the end of that shaft, is opposite of that, you will have a cross. It will cancel out vibrations. This it is the first RS with a balance shaft in it. The NF4 did not. There are some people who say it robs horsepower. Technically, if you have anything spinning other than the crank, it will take some horsepower, but obviously the engineers at Honda figured that the juice is worth the squeeze. This uses the Castle socket to hold that into place. They make a gear jammer for this, which I have left magnetized over on my other bench. Either that or my apprentice took it. I'm not sure which, because it's not over there. I've again broken my rule of having all my stuff handy. My apprentice stole it and now it's gone forever. I can hold the crank, but people are going to yell at me. Come on, Keegan. How embarrassing. Motion Pro makes an aluminum gear jammer, just so you're not bashing your gears against each other. I think this is going to come off fairly easily, so I'm not super worried about it. Gotta make sure it comes off the right way, though. It does. Don't yell at me. That's a perfectly fine way of taking it off. It does interfere with the timing sprocket. It is apparently off by one tooth. It looks like it is not timed up perfectly, which is very interesting. There's quite a bit of play there. When it does not have the gear on it, there is a tooth. I will put all of those together. That is going to be a 14. Usually I like to wear gloves when I do this. I knew that these engines weren't going to be dirty and greasy and grimy like dirt bike engines, so I did not this time. This is stuck on there pretty good. Yep, it is stuck on there. Very good. I'm not going to pry on this, because that is the worst thing you want to do on anything, but I can tell that with just a little bit of maneuvering, it'll back itself off. And I especially do not want to pry on the timing tangs. I just knew that it was just a little stuck. No prying, just a little maneuvering. That is a very beautiful straight cut primary gear, which I'll put there. This timing gear can only go on one way. There is a key, which is nice, because it would be awful if there was a way to mess that up. This is the balance shaft timing gear. And interestingly enough, there is almost no pressure on the seal collar. I have found that most seals do not have enough pressure on their... Great, now that doesn't want to come off. There must be just a little something on this. Wes Orloff taught me a trick with seals. You can take the spring off of the inner lip, cut a couple millimeters off the end, because it unscrews. If you take the spring out of a seal, I could not believe it when I first saw it. It's like threaded. The end of it is tapered down and it is screwed into the end. You can unscrew the spring on the inside of a seal. There was some sort of Harley that had bad fork seals, and his trick was to tighten up the spring on the inner lip. I could not believe it when I did it. It was insane. You never want to pry on bare aluminum, because all this stuff is soft. So I got a little plastic wedge in there, because this is very tight on this. And it's close to coming off. It's just fighting me to make me embarrassed. But yeah, you can take the spring off a seal. I was absolutely amazed by that. I knew something stupid like this was going to happen and embarrass me. I don't want to have to pull out a little puller for that. That would be a pain in the ass. I don't think this will. Oh, it will. This is a small snap-on slide hammer. It's a really, really nice kit that's got inside and outside jaws on it. I know that this is just going to take a little more convincing. Like I knew it would. This is a trick tool for pulling out seals and little shafts that are busted. It has, get it to focus, a little slot in there, so you can put a screw in this or a bolt if you've got to pull like a power valve part out. It has like a 1 pound or 2 pound slide, so you're not absolutely destroying and reefing on stuff. It is a very nice kit. I will include the part number in the video. This is one of my favorite tools. Okay, all that is left is the shift selection parts and dowels. If dowels will come out by hand, I will pull them out by hand just so that I do not lose them. I like to put them in with the screws that accompanied that dowel. This had a quick shifter or ignition interruption tool. Ignition interruption electronics. And I took it off in the last video. I did not take off the collar that came with it. This is a whole plug. I believe that this plug is a neutral indicator that went in it with the stock wiring harness. It looks like there is a little shaft with a keyway in it. This is just a blind plug that probably came with the HEJA kit. This engine, interestingly, is not milled for it, which is odd. I'm going to put that with the transmission parts. I will also get the clutch actuator out of there. This is a little clutch actuator keeper. In the stock Honda CR125, the actuator is held in by the stator plate. Here's your actuator. Here's a little boss that holds it in place. I'm going to put that with the transmission parts just to keep them all together. Now, this is a 3mm hex. I will not be able to get a socket in there. Snap-on cells. I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing that. Short Allen wrenches. They are short. You get more torque on them without bending them. They are a lot more controlled when you have a really, really short space to get something in. I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing that now. But remember, I do this for a living. This is the only thing that I like to spend money on. I don't go outside. I don't do anything else. All I do is wrench on stuff. It's all I want to do. So don't be sad that I spend all my money on tools and I drove a Honda Civic with no front bumper for like 4 years so that I could afford stuff like this. Okay, this transmission is almost ready to come out. The clutch push rod just fell out. When I turned it, I heard it hit the deck. I'll put that with the transmission parts. I am going to pull the transmission shift parts out. The shift shaft itself just comes out. Do not forget the washer on there. I like to keep this on this. I never take this apart, ever. There are some people that claim that this spring wears out. I don't believe it. I'm not changing this. I've never had to change one. I've experienced broken ones. I will inspect it for cracks, but I'm not taking that apart if I don't have to, because it is a bastard to get that spring back on. Do not forget there is a top hat that sits on this shift actuator that corresponds with this little roller that rolls as you are shifting. I like to keep all of that stuff together, everything that's included in this. This is going to come out as an assembly. Do not let this explode in your hands into a million pieces. I'm going to take this out now for you to see it. Typically, I leave this in until I start to wash all these parts, just so that they don't fly all over the place. It's called a shift pawl. We'll focus here. There is a little cap under each of these, and there is a little spring under there. The spring is tiny. The way that this works is there's a plate, which I left over there, and as you shift in, it releases it on the side that you're pushing and pushes your shift drum into the next gear. As you come back, that plate pushes it back down, so when you shift in the opposite direction, it pushes your shift drum into the up or down gear, whichever you're shifting. These love to explode. They are sometimes a pain in the ass to reinstall. So I try to disassemble it by hand so that I don't let it do it on its own. I'll show you this cap and this spring here. If you've never seen one, that is the spring, that is the cap. boy, what a pain in the ass. It's not a pain in the ass, Gary. You're just a dumbass and you don't know how to do it. Okay, well, it's a pain in the ass for me. When it pertains to the shift drum and the shift detent locator, it is a 12 millimeter hex. I do not like to reef on that because you can bend shift forks, you can bend and damage transmission shafts. This is a very delicate, I don't want to say delicate transmission, but it's definitely not something that you want to impact, put a ton of pressure on. There's really not a lot of torque on it. These are almost always Loctited, but that being said, that is one thing that I will not impact on or off. Ton of Loctite on that, as per usual. That is going with the transmission parts. There is a shift detent arm with shift detent roller on that. I take that off after I take this off, and I put that on before I put this on. Otherwise, you have a cocked arm where you're trying to get a bolt in at an odd angle, and it just never works out. In my experience, it is best to put this on first and take it off after you have removed that. There is a little detent in here for you to take a screwdriver and extend that all the way down so you can install this. If you try to put it on after the fact, you'll be wrestling with that bolt. It's M6 by 1 for some reason, and the number of those of engines that I've rebuilt that have been stripped out or put in cross-threaded is absolutely insane. Now that I've taken that out, there's no pressure on the arm. There is no damaging that. There is always, on Hondas at least, the bolt, which has a shoulder on it for this to run. That's got a little bit of wear on it, which is not uncommon. A little bit of Loctite locked in there too. A washer and the spring. These springs have a tendency to wear. I have seen them have grooves. This one's got a little bit of a groove, not enough to replace, but it is something to look out for. And there is typically a little dowel pin in there that will want to fall out and get lost. It cannot fall out and get lost if you take it out and put it in your bin. Okay, we are now left with bearings and transmission parts in our case halves, as well as the crank. I'm not ready to separate this just yet. I've got two more things to do, one being the intake manifold. Usually I take this off first, but I was so excited to get to the internals of it that I took this off second. It is always so funny to me that when people send in engines to be rebuilt, they will have cloth on the intake. They'll have every orifice of the engine totally plugged up, and it's like, okay, well, it's coming to me to be disassembled, so I'm not necessarily sure why you spent all that time taking that out. This gasket is made out of dinosaur bones because it is crumbling in my hands. This is definitely not a stock RS125 intake. This thing is massive. It has carbon fiber reeds, which are dissolving. I hate carbon fiber reeds. They have a tendency to explode, and carbon is not very friendly on your engine. I will give a shout out to Tony Dukas, even though he is not sponsoring me. He is a manufacturer of hypertension fiberglass reeds, which I prefer. We'll let this focus. You can see the inside of this pedal is dissolving, which means that this is about to explode. and it is not very friendly on the inside of your engine. Interestingly, it only has one reed deflector, not two. This is definitely handmade. It does have backup reinforcement reed pedals. I suppose I could probably make it so you can see it. It has backup pedals, or B pedals, one reed stop, which was on the bottom, which is interesting. Yeah, I hate carbon fiber reeds. I have seen more carbon fiber reeds destroy engines than anything else. Tony Dukas makes very, very nice hypertension fiberglass reeds. They are more affordable. They do not explode like carbon fiber reeds do. He knows a lot more about the science behind reeds than I do. I just know that I've seen more carbon fiber reeds fail than anything. That being said, I'm also not a huge fan of V-Force reeds. They have plastic cages and carbon fiber reeds, and the plastic deforms and the carbon fiber reed slams on the plastic and starts to deteriorate. Boyson makes phenomenal full aluminum intake manifolds. They come with fiberglass reeds, which are very similar to Tony Dukas's. I just think it's a much nicer reed valve and better reeds. But obviously the people who were building this had a preference for this. That is their decision to make. So the other difference between a CR125 and an RS125 is the transmission comes out of the side. We will get our handy dandy impact back out. Oily, gross. We are down to our last pocket. Now I've done it. This has a big giant O-ring on it. I hope I'm not pulling the transmission out with this because I don't want it to fall. When I pull transmissions out, when I am separating crankcases, I am very paranoid about dropping washers. There are always very thin washers on either end of most transmissions, and I am typically very afraid of losing said washer. And this transmission is fighting me because there is a little bit of narfed up ends from the sprocket bouncing around on there. Yeah, I'm always very paranoid about washers falling off into the ether, not remaining on the transmission shaft that they were supposed to remain on. This is, of course, going to fight me. Come on, you're embarrassing me. I don't want to hammer on this, and I don't want to drop it or turn it in some weird way, and it is really embarrassing me right now. I'm so embarrassed. So what I am going to do, I have a very small brass hammer for this. Unfortunately, I used to have a really nice shop that I worked in, and it was bulldozed when half of Millennium burned to the ground. I took one for the team, and we turned my shop into the new plating room. And of course that's as far as I can get, because even with my small brass hammer, it is not small enough. And this is going to be a fucking puzzle for my hand. How annoying. here we go. Okay, so always use a brass drift, brass hammer. This is a little 12-ounce, like toy hammer for jewelers or something. This is the cassette plate. This is the big, weird, goofy O-ring that Stuart said even he was having a hard time getting with this new engine. I am now going to take my tools off of this plate because I have run out of room to put more parts. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it into the bread rack and let it proof and become a beautiful engine. I'm going to take another tray. I'm going to take another $6 Harbor Freight part organizer. And I will start the dance again. Okay. As you can see, I am drinking water. One of my sayings when it comes to engine building, mechanics, anything of that nature, machining, I don't drink alcohol while I do it. I also do not do drugs of any kind. That is my personal preference. I understand that there are many, many people who enjoy to do whatever they want to do. That is their prerogative. That is their life choice. I do not think that drugs or alcohol go hand in hand with quality engine building, nor do I think that they go hand in hand with responsible choices while operating machinery. If you want to do that, that's your prerogative. But I think you have a much better chance of success if you work while sober. I just dropped a bunch of little tiny nuts and bolts, which is awesome. I just heard the bearings of my life dissolve. Okay, I have one transmission shaft. I like to keep its shift fork with it in the manner of which that it came off with its shift fork shaft. I just dropped half of the gears off of this transmission shaft. Fortunately, they can only go on one way. Yep, just like a pile of nuts and bolts. Thankfully, the transmission is in phenomenal shape in this. I was very scared that it was going to be beat to death by some Grand Prix racer, but it is not. So, like I said, this can only go on one way. It has a small gear. It has a washer, which is the same as the other washer. It has a big gear and a bearing. I like to keep the stuff in the order that it came off, which will greatly increase the chances of success that I have. I have a burned shift fork. Behold. Bum, bum, bum. I have never taken apart a road race bike that did not have a burned shift fork. Bum, bum, bum. I believe this is first and second gear, which is the gear that you are mashing on as you are road racing. It is beat to death in there. Very sad, very sad. The other one appears to be in slightly better condition. But yeah, that one is burned for sure. The other one is also burned. You can see the mark up on the inside of there. You can see how burned those are. It has taken the hard facing, the chrome, off of the faces. I have repaired these. I have milled them and stellite welded these and then surface ground them down. It's a huge pain in the ass. It is a serious pain in the ass. But sometimes you cannot get the shift forks, my balance shaft, so it is best to hard face them. I will see if Stuart at Rising Sun Cycles has shift forks before I attempt to make them, because like with anything, making them is a huge production. And if I don't have to make them, I won't, because boy, it is a real pain in the ass. Shift drum, I like to put that between the transmissions. So I am left with crank cases and a crank with a piston on it. I'm going to leave that all together so that I may weigh it when I am done, and I am left with 1, 2, 3. I took these off with the transmission cassette. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I always double, triple, quadruple check that there are no little hidden gremlin nuts and bolts. The amount of cases that have come to me at work with broken cases or cracked ends because somebody has tried to separate their cases without having all of the nuts and bolts removed, I would probably say is 1 in 20 that come in. This engine especially, because it is so weird and not a CR125, I want to make doubly and triply sure that I do not miss anything. This engine has also got doubled up base gaskets, which is one of my pet peeves. I hate doubling up gaskets on anything. I am having Cometic send me many multiple thicknesses of rubber-coated tin base gaskets. I hate paper gaskets. I cannot stand paper gaskets. If I don't have to use them, I won't. I will pay to have nice gaskets made because it drives me crazy. So I have only contempt for paper gaskets. You got to grease them up. You got to use gasket cinch. You got to use this. You got to use that. Why don't you just use Cometic gaskets, and you won't have to worry about, you know, having. I mean, look at how thin this bridge is. A lot of times it's even thinner between your C transfer port, and it's just a recipe for disaster. Okay. Everybody wants to hear me bitch for 2 hours. One of my favorite tools. I wish they would sponsor me. Is my Motion Pro crankcase separator. It is the nicest crankcase separator that money can buy. And that thread is a little bunged up. Maybe it's just got a little dirt in it. Maybe. Nope, I'm gonna have to grab a tap for that. But it is better to tap it than to mash up the threads. If you're going to spend money on something, spend money on very, 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 very high quality taps, dies, drill bits, files. Do not buy Harbor Freight drill bits. Do not buy the Harbor Freight tap and die set. That is a recipe for broken taps and dies. That is a recipe for broken drill bits. My apprentice and I joke that Harbor Freight sells one-time use drill bits. If you do not get it the first time, you are not getting it. Interestingly, it is close to 9 o'clock at night, 9:30, and I hear a dump truck or cement truck outside. It's Saturday night at 9:30. I'm getting down in the shop and I hear a cement truck backing up, which is very odd. Saturday morning, everybody's home. This is the Cadillac of crankcase separators. For the love of God, do not hammer your crank out of your cases. There is never, ever, ever a time where a hammer should touch a crankshaft. Ever. It is like our worst nightmare. Every time we get an RM125 crank, some kid took a roofing hammer to the crank end. And don't get me wrong, a 15... Sorry about that. My memory card ran out of room because I would not stop yapping. As I was saying, that is the most beautiful crankshaft I have ever seen in my entire life. I will get it out for you in 1 second. It is just so incredibly beautiful. I can't even... There are very few things in engines that I like or think are nice. I am the biggest hater of all time. People will show me their little stupid widgets or some stock crank, and I'm like, yeah, real nice. That's very, very compelling thing that you have there. This crank is... It's almost too nice. Not sure if I deserve it. Get down Saturday night. Get down Saturday night. Oh, let's see. Make sure I'm not all jacked up. Again, a hand operation to not destroy everything. Beautiful crank is coming out with some pressure, which means that the crank is not destroyed. The bearing is staying in the cases, which means that the cases aren't worn out. Everything's coming up Millhouse. You're not supposed to hold it like this, but that was how that I got it out. Just look at that crank. Beautiful tungsten slugs. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Beautiful connecting rod. That is a nice rotating assembly. Cannot complain about that. Very good wash on top of the piston. This engine was running perfectly when it was taken out of service. There is no burning on the bottom of the piston, which means it is not overheated. A little bit of scuffing on the exhaust side right where that triple port bridge is, just like I said. Yeah, that is a beautiful, beautiful crank. So I am going to end here because it is 9:45 and I want to go home because I am tired now that I am a construction worker at work I go to bed early because I have to wake up at 4:45 to come to work. This is going to live on my baker's rack here. I'm going to put the cases on a separate pan. The next video will start with comparing the difference between the HEJA engine with the stock engine. I will compare the transmission ratios because there are many multitudes of gears available for these engines. And I will either talk about cranks, crankshaft rebuilding, and balance factors, or that will be the cylinder episode. I get tons and tons and tons and tons of questions about Nikasil cylinders, prep, the process that is involved in Nikasil plating cylinders. There is nothing but misconceptions out there. Everyone thinks that they know exactly how Nikasil cylinders are plated and made, and none of them have any idea, and they say the dumbest imaginable things, which drive me crazy. But at the same point, plating companies have not done a great job at conveying information to people. There is a lot of secrecy for very little reason with some of it, as most people do not have access to industrial plating pre-treatment chemicals. Most people are not going to plate cylinders in their backyard. They are just going to cause an ecological disaster. So some of the stuff we can be a little more open with as far as the processes. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about the chemicals or our plating formula or, you know, the nature of how much silicon carbide is in our plating mixture, but I can talk about the grinding, honing, pre-treatments, etc. Because I need to make that for work anyways. So it'll either be about cranks or cylinders. There will be another complete episode about my case cleaning and preparation. Some people call it blueprinting. I personally don't call it blueprinting. Blueprinting is a completely different thing. It is a misused term to call it blueprinting. Somebody has gotten in here with an end mill. There are marks from an end mill from them widening it to fit that wider cage. Yeah, I don't call it blueprinting because I'm not actually blueprinting anything. Blueprinting is the process of measuring cases, measuring cranks, and documenting those measurements in comparison to a factory specification, i.e. creating a blueprint for it. And most of the time, that is not what people are doing. They are decking cases. They are making sure things are flat and square. That is not blueprinting. That is case preparation. You can call it blueprinting if you want to charge your customers more money using a fancy term, but that is not what that is. I will also talk about my methods of bearing removal. I have some very, very, very nice tools for safely and delicately removing bearings from cases. I absolutely, without a doubt, never, ever, ever use hammers. You will only serve to damage your cases if you use hammers. At least you have to have a press, whether that is a hydraulic press or a jack press, thread press, screw press, whatever you want to call it. Most of this stuff is going to get vapor blasted. I am a stickler for vapor blasting. Anything magnesium, I powder coat because magnesium will, without a doubt, oxidize in the air. I will go through that, my preparations for that for engines, and we will cross the rest of the bridges when we get there. Hopefully this video was less boring, even though because I ran out of memory, I'm sure I'm at like an hour and a half by now, which everybody's really excited to watch an hour and a half video of me fiddling around and mumbling to myself. As always, thank you very much. Until the next video.